Bom dia para quem é de bom dia, boa noite para quem é da boa noite, boa tarde se você acabou de receber essa notificação e está vindo ver mais um bate-papo Mayhem. E hoje a gente vai falar um pouquinho de gnose, igreja gnóstica, Eclésia Babylon, e para isso a gente conseguiu o grande chefe de tudo, tal Nahash, que está lá nos Estados Unidos. Por isso eu preciso dar umas instruções. Primeiro, você vai apertar aqui Subtitles e depois vai colocar Translate to Português para você poder entender a nossa conversa. Because now I will be speaking English. So, well, the first thing you tell me to call you Bob, but we're kind of shy because you have done such a great work. But I should call you Sir or Taj Nahal. Or can I call you Bob?
You can call me anything as long as you call me a friend, is what I like to say. So I want to start out by wishing Germany a happy birthday. Our mother Germany in our community, it's her birthday today. I'm not going to sing happy birthday. I'm going to spare you all the birthday song, but just know that we love her and we're thinking of her, and we hope she's having a wonderful evening.
All right, so we do have a couple of questions, but the first one that we always ask our guests is to introduce yourself and tell us why did you choose this path through will, and how do you feel about that, and why did you choose to go to this path in your life? And you can begin with since I was a child and go on. People love to listen to how do you get here? Why did you choose this specific way of life?
So I would start by saying that I was born in Indiana, a state in America, to a North Irish Catholic family. The story goes, I was dedicated at 10 days old to the Blessed Virgin at the Geode Grotto. And the town I grew up in was called St. Meinrad, Indiana, or is called St. Meinrad, Indiana. Population of about 800 folks. My family's from there, and I grew up there. And my family has always had an interconnection to ritualized behavior, living a consecrated life. My grandmother, before she met my grandpa, had been a nun. And so my upbringing was very much in harmony with that Benedictine spirituality that never left my grandmother for her whole life. She's still alive to this day, 96 years old, and she still brings that Benedictine spirituality into her life. That's something that I was given. From an early age, I was exposed to the independent sacramental movement, both Old Catholicism, the Utrecht succession Old Catholicism, and then also French Gnosticism. I've been active in some manner in that for most of my life. And of course, I've had other side journeys into other traditions. But for the most part, that was something that has always been with me. I went through, of course, the seminary process of training under a bishop. I was ordained a priest. And then eventually I was consecrated in 2018, a Gnostic bishop by my mentor and consecrating Bishop T. Allen Greenfield. How everything then got from that point to Ecclesia Babylon is a story that takes 3 years to tell, really, because our development as a community has been years in the making. But the other aspect of my spiritual walk, of course, was my exposure to Thelema at a very young age, just through finding it. I was that first generation where the internet became something that we all started having in our households. So very early on in the 90s, I was introduced to the Thelemic writings, to the teachings of Aleister Crowley, and that simply infused into my spiritual mainframe. It just became a part of who I was, something that it was an ambient presence, my Thelemic practices and my understanding. And in the tradition of T. Allen Greenfield and his predecessor, Michael Berdyaew, I began to take those paths that I had walked and amalgamate them together into a practice that was meeting the needs of my particular, I guess, spiritual desires. I started working with other bishops and other priests and talking to them about my feelings of essentially wanting to develop a Thelemic sacramental community, something outside of I guess something that groks the notion of what Catholic spirituality is, the nuances and the individual cultural particularities that make Catholic spirituality what it is. I always tell people that I speak Catholic spirituality, the accent of Catholic spirituality, in that it's something that influences everything I do, even my Thelemic practice. So this bringing the Gnostic sacramentalism, the Logos-centered Gnostic sacramentalism, and our Thelemic working together started to occur, but also at the same time, where I tell people about 6 years ago, the same individuals that are in this scene now, you know, Talis and me and all of us who have known each other for years, all of us started being drawn to this call from what we came to understand was the egregore of Babylon. And through all of that, we came into this development, which became Ecclesia Babylon. And it hit all of those places in our spiritual needs. It satisfied us. And so we started working our systems on our own, in a very small group. And over time, of course, that's spread. More people are understanding our methodology and our spiritual technology. And so we've been experiencing a bit of a growth recently due to that.
Now you mentioned the Catholic. Here in Brazil, we are mostly Catholic, and with a bit of some radical Protestant, but 85% of our country is Catholic. And we do have a very, how would I say, they have Catholic and they have magic, but they have sympathies. It's what we call in Brazil sympathies. That is the folk magic. And we're kind of interested in what can you say about this mixture about your Catholic and Thelema? How does that?
Well, it's
feel this
mixture? I see the Catholic aspect. Yeah, I see the Catholic aspect of myself as being something that is part of my cultural makeup. So as much as it was a spiritual practice when I was younger, I would say that spiritually, no one would say that I would be Catholic. No one would put that label on me these days. That's something that I recognize through my own amalgamation, that when I take in a spiritual tradition, when I infuse it into my practice, I don't throw other things away. I keep it all with me. So to me, fusion of paths and traditions within yourself is a natural byproduct of the spiritual walk, of just understanding your place in this work. So as far as my upbringing, I grew up with, you could very easily say that I grew up with the old world traditions. There were a lot of customs in my family from the old world that were not mainstream American practices or traditions. And these things were, of course, from my pagan ancestry, bringing it through into Catholicism and mixing it in. Of course, then we come into the New World, and we go even further with the Afro-Caribbean traditions and stuff. And this, to me, is a natural happening, because Catholicism has that cultural root. It's easy to build upon because it has that ritualistic, consecrated element to where even lay members can act in the act of worship and act in the act of theurgy and the working of the rosary. This is something that these traditions and methods you see expressed in our own way in Ecclesia Babylon, if that makes sense.
It's totally simple. But here in Brazil, we have this kind of visions. And I personally have this goal of thinking that most of the cultures and most of the orders, they tend to have much more things in common, that they have things that separated us.
If you take all of our orders, if you take all of our orders and you go back far enough, they're all interconnected. So I always find a lot of humor in the idea of people, I guess, expecting rigidity within their own order, knowing that everything comes from something. And we encourage, of course, folks in Ecclesia Babylon to search and explore, because there's room for everybody. Listen, if I need to explain more, or if I answer something wrong, then just say, hey, you got to answer something different, and then I'll help. I'll do that.
No, there's no right or wrong questions here, because this mixture of people who practices several paths and stuff like that's the way that fascinates us. So I asked the same question to about 250 people, and I got 250 different questions. For example, my next question to you is based on your background on Catholic and Thelema and the Ecclesia Gnostica. What is magic to you?
Magic is an internal expression of a psychological need, and an external expression, or an internal need, an external expression, right? So you have a desire, you have an urge or a want or a thought that you can't get rid of, and magic allows you to optimize your understanding of the situation you're encountering, the work you need to get done. Magic is a form of active prayer to me. Magic is a form of, it's a way to instill hope within people. Magic is an art and a science, so you can become a craftsman of it. It's something that you can work on your own, and you can achieve within yourself. So magic is all of those things. So I tend to refer to ritual and magic as divine theater. It is a way for us to connect with what is across the veil, in a sense, and allows us to open our world up to something bigger than ourselves. I would finish with that.
We had another question that we usually love to ask people, that is based on your background. What do you believe happens after we die? And is it your personal belief? Do you believe? What are your views on this subject?
So what happens when we die? I had an experience some time ago. I happened to be on a entheogenic trip, and it was a heroic dose, as McKenna would say. And I started to understand, I guess, in my own way, the nature of our purpose. I started to say, well, what is our purpose? Why do we, in Kabbalistic terms, gather the sparks? What is our work supposed to achieve? And I was given this vision of a dandelion being blown, and the dandelion flew off. And I can't, in the throes of that vision, it was not linear. So I can't tell you like I looked over at someone, but I asked, observing this phenomenon, what am I seeing? And the answer was, you're seeing us. And when I looked again, I saw the planet Earth, and it was having this, almost looked like mushroom spores were floating off of it. And I said, but what is that? And they said, that's you. You seed the universe with life. And when they said that to me, it was a catalyzing moment, because I started to understand that the narrative that we've been fed, that there's some kind of materialistic, human end to all of this, that we're supposed to have some kind of human rewards and all of that, always was very unsettling to me. But the idea that we are gathering the sparks to then go out to keep the universe alive, to give life to the universe, that to me is something that I want to work within. So that's my answer to you.
Great. Thales told me to ask you a question about the devotional work. Could tell us a little bit more about it. How does it work? How do you practice it?
So we have in our community the call to Babylon, and that is essentially the entry point into our methodology of sacramental life. When people come into Ecclesia Babylon, the goal is the development and connection to the egregore of Babylon, the Divine Mother. We anthropomorphize her in the Thelemic sense as Babylon, but we also understand, as Crowley did, and as Crowley taught, that this entity, this being, is something greater than just a name or an image. So really, we are a community, an ecclesia focusing on a reverence of the Divine Mother in a sacramental methodology. The Call of Babylon is an example of that, in that you engage in the sacrament of consecration. You engage in the work of mantra work, which is important, I have found, subjectively, into the building of egregore, the building of your connection to egregore. Brazil is where the Call to Babylon, the 4G community developed the call. And when I began to work it, I was stunned. I was shocked by it, because it was so potent and powerful. And it's one of those aspects of practice that you don't expect to be so fulfilling. Other aspects of our ecclesia, as far as the building of community and egregore, is that, and of course another aspect of being a sacramental community, is that we have other sacramental behaviors. We wear ritualistically a sacred mark on our head. This reminds us of the Divine Feminine. It's a mark that we received within the development of our technology. We, of course, engage in Eucharistic work. We gather for Mass and solemn rites. So we have a community that seeks to work together to attain a closeness to this this current that we've all been called to experience.
I have a question from Brother I. He said, do you think that humanity is running in a circle in the sense that we are reaching the same point over and over again, but using different methods and words?
That's a good question. It seems like humans as a collective species have a propensity for amnesia. We tend to forget that we had lessons that we had learned. So we end up doing those things again because we don't seem to revere the accumulation of our knowledge, and we don't seem to revere the sanctity of each other. So until we start approaching, until there's a change of consciousness and people approach everything in a different set, to take away that I guess here in America we'd say that capitalistic urge, the need for subjugation. Wasn't it Saint Augustine that said that libido dominandi was man's original sin, our desire for domination. This is something that every generation of humans seems to have collectively. Until all of these things are somehow addressed, there is going to seem like there's a lot of dead-end behavior, and it is going to seem like there's a lot of start and stop. But what I tell folks is that what we're doing right now, we're trying to do for 3 generations from now, spiritually. We are trying to set the groundwork for practice for people and a way of living and treating other people that will be helpful. Because we don't see ourselves, of course, as the final answer to any solution, problem, whatever. We are a part of the community. And our goal is to try to better ourselves, but also to better everything around us, to gather the sparks, as they say in Kabbalistic practice, or as I was raised, to be a mensch, just to be a good person. All of these things have to happen. We can all have orders and degrees and communities and stuff, and it's going to be very frustrating for a very long time for a lot of folks, because until we as a collective community of humans decide that certain things have to stop in order for us to move forward, we're gonna be just fighting the fight as we can.
Yeah, this is Thales, the divine mark, the Eucharistics. If you can explain to us a little bit about each and every one of them.
So we have this the tilic, the sacred mark that we place on our head, that places us in a constant state of awareness of the mother. It marks us as a devotee of hers. It is a way for us to have a binding practice, a sacramental that will allow other people to feel a sense of community. It's a practice. All of our practices are things that you add into your current practice. That's something I want to emphasize. We don't want you to come to our community and try to forget who you are and throw who you are away. We need you to bring yourself so that we can learn from you as well, because that's what we do. So we have the tilic, we have of course we have what you would consider to be the at times traditional Gnostic sacraments. Marriage, holy unction, funeral rites. Those we offer that as a community because it is an aspect of our order. It's an aspect of our spiritual practice that we've always had. We have in our society an order of, I would say, levels of membership. So for instance, you have in Ecclesia Babylon, the first circle. And of course, we call that the children of the earth. And those are members who have gone through the 77 days and who want to engage in binding to the egregore and developing practice within Ecclesia Babylon. And if everyone, if people would just want to stop at the first circle and not do anything else, there's no pressure. Because the second circle then is essentially our clergy. And that's the circle of lovers. And our order allows people to pursue holy orders if they choose, but it's not a requirement. The third circle of our membership is, of course, the order of hermits, the circle of hermits. And those are all of us who hold ecclesiastical lineages for our community. And those who are hermits are the ones that are obligated to teach and share their knowledge with the community, help mediate disputes, try to keep things moving smoothly, make sure everyone's being treated right, make sure everyone feels okay and comfortable and they're getting the experience they need.
It's okay. Okay. I have another question that is regarding to Babylon. That you said that you regard her as the divine mother, but I think most of the Thelemites here in Brazil, they associate Babylon mostly with the sacred prostitute or the woman
Right.
with the huge lust or something like that. What are your point of view on Babylon? Can you tell us more about the way you see them and the comparison between these two figures? Here in Brazil, we have the cult of Virgin Maria, that is the Holy Mother of Christ, and we have a huge amount of people that are devotee to this. So I believe this point of view that you have about the Holy Mother is very well accepted here in Brazil. But for Thelemites, they seem to have other points of view. So can you tell us a little bit more about Babylon?
So I would say that that I am a goddess-centered individual, always have been. And I've been a devotee of the Virgin Mary. Of course, when I was a kid, I was in the Legion of Mary. I've made thousands of rosaries, the whole thing. So the draw to the divine feminine is a byproduct of my practice and my spiritual life from a very early age. So it just naturally expresses itself in ways at times that and within traditions where other people might not be, I guess, is familiar with my willingness to accept these archetypes as part of the Divine Mother. So to address the lust aspect of it, I always tell people that the one thing that I'm happy for is that my mom had some lust in her and got pregnant so that I could come about and have a wonderful life. Lust and sex and all these things are none of it's a negative. It's how it's used. It's are you using it to control people? Are you using it to commodify people? Are you using it to, right? So you have all of these things, is someone being subjugated, right? But if someone is expressing their free passion, we as humans were imbued with it. So those things I don't find, I always say that there is a contingent that believes that Mary and Joseph had children. So even the Virgin Mary succumbed to lust and passion, it's definitely an intense aspect of the Mother Babylon, but then there's other aspects that have not only revealed themselves to practitioners, especially as they've gone through the Call of Babylon, but just in the writings of Aleister Crowley, when he talks about Babylon and refers to her many aspects, even referring to her in the name Persephone. So we see Babylon reflected through her as well. We start to understand that Babylon becomes the name for the grand archetype. It's what we've chosen to call her, in a sense. It's what Crowley was led to call her. And as we practice and as we continue to develop in our practice, we learn more about her aspect. And so I tell people, I do caution people that in Thelemic practice, this happening that's been happening the last 6 years is something that's actually very new in the Thelemic current. It's something that people all around are starting to see as a change, and that's this drive and walk toward Babylon as a focus of worship. And so it says something, I guess, in that we do actively mix in bhakti practice and technology into our work. And we, just because of my work in the Eastern traditions, I could go on and talk about that. We could probably have to have another show for that one, but it's the bhakti element, as I talk about things staying with me, and I just don't discard things when I am introduced to new spiritual technology. The bhakti element has stayed, and that development of that interpersonal relationship with the divine being, the one that we chose, being the one that we made our decision to dedicate our focus on, being Babylon. So we're getting ready to find out all kinds of things about the manifestation of this deity that have never been written about before. But you have Mother Georgia in I think she's in Georgia. She wrote Approaching Babylon. She says her writings are incredible. You have all of these individuals and communities that our community, we Mother Germany, whose birthday is today, she had a writing after she did the 77 days, the initial time. She produced a writing for our ecclesia that to me was a catalyzer. It was something that we needed to help us develop further into our understanding of Ecclesia Babylon and our practice in this community. So it's not just us, it's all kinds of communities all around that are starting to hold on to the 156 current. It's starting to turn on to not only a different way of approaching the divine, how we understand the Divine Mother, but also our freedom of knowing that within that Divine Mother is virtue, it's lust, it's love, it's hatred, it's everything, so that we can bring it all to her.
This thing that you produced after the call to Babylon, I thought that was one of the greatest ideas ever in an order, because most of the orders said, "Oh, give me your text, and you have to produce a magic diary and everything like that." And you asked for art or something. Can you tell us a little bit about this process? I know that Thales already told us in his interview, but we usually treat these interviews as Stan Lee said. Every comic of Spider-Man, you must ask about the identity of Spider-Man and how did he came and everything, because this could be the first interview that someone is watching here. And to the Brazilian audience, how do you explain this work? What is this call to Babylon?
I find, and I'm under the conviction that the patriarchy within spirituality has tipped us into a point that we're in big trouble in the planet right now. I mean, we are in trouble a little bit with the way everyone's behaving, with the way these patriarchal systems have established us to be in this constant state of warfare. That these systems have established us to be so rigidly sectarian. It is time that the mother has to come back. And I guess the Babylon movement is that people have gotten tired of it. People have gotten tired of the patriarchy that keeps people from achieving infinite potential. And what we see within the Babylon current is a way to attain holiness and also experience the fullness of life. A way for us to not feel like just because we do one thing or another, or because we have this fault or this flaw, that we also are not at the same time worthy of approaching divinity ourselves.
We have seen some of our work of arts in Instagram. And Thales asked you if you could say a little bit about comparing the Gnosticism, the devotional work in Babylon, and your work as an artist. How do you see that all those things are connected? I can see that, but I'd like to hear your words about that, because I start the interview and then my mind goes floating. Wow, I'm mind blowing. But I'd like to put that in words for the people who are listening to us.
So I process spiritual teaching through my art. I work and I focus on symbolism very strongly in the work I produce, and it is a reflection of my contemplative work. After I've done the rituals, and after I've done the reading, and after I've done the discussions with people or the meetings or anything, I sit at home and I take a bit of time every day to put together pieces that are reflective of the work that I'm, the esoteric nuances that I'm processing, the things that I'm trying to think about. When I come meet and am introduced to a new spiritual technology, you're going to eventually see it reflect in my art, because I'm processing what I know of it through my art. So my art became very important for me to express to people my spiritual understanding, leading to the amalgamation of Ecclesia Babylon. Like, it's, when you see my art, you can understand why you can start to see that I have there's several avenues of spiritual a spiritual foundation that feeds into what I do. And by expressing it, it keeps it alive for me. It keeps it fresh and it keeps it active all at the same time. So when I'm doing something, I'm not just like when I'm in worship or prayer, I'm not just in a Thelemic prayer doing the Thelemic thing, or then there's a Shaivite thing that I'm doing, or that doesn't work for me like that. It's all at the same time for me. I don't partition myself anymore. And through Ecclesia Babylon, I don't have to, because there's been so many technologies and orders in which I had to put one thing aside to do another thing. And I had to have somewhere that I could be comfortable. And there were other people that had that same desire. So even in Ecclesia Babylon, we have all kinds of ceremonies and rites, depending on the needs of the community. And I love all of it. And I've learned so much. So it's been an incredible dynamic for us, and it works out so well.
Yeah. I really love to interview artists and dancers and singers and all people who can channel their faith and their spirituality through art. I believe that's the next step, because it's very easy to decorate all the Crowley works, and you can cite all the Liber excellent by heart. But to produce art is something, I believe it's a step up from these things. And the fact that the
About
Ecclesia
4 years
Babylon
ago,
asks you to, as your first work is to produce art, I think that's amazing.
about 4 years ago, I was in an accident in which I had a head injury, and the head injury did kind of a number on me, as we say here, and it caused me to have issues to this day with memory, with the ability at times to bring things back. So what I started to notice when I first got in my accident, I noticed that I had no recall. I was having trouble remembering the things I had read. And I used to be able to just kind of rattle it out. The art allowed me to express to people that I'm still understanding the concepts and I'm still understanding the spiritual nuance, even if I might forget what quote went where, or because that's definitely a thing, you know, and you have to adapt to anything that life throws at you. So by producing this art, I was able to remind myself of the technology and the spiritual work that I'd already previously done. It allows me to keep it current and allows me to work with it, so that if people approach me about concepts or ideas or topics, these are not things that I'm lost in. I'm right there with you.
Brother Ayn asked também, is your order, né, the Ecclesia Babylon's alignment similar to the Blavatsky theosophy in any way?
I would say that theosophy...
there's no true religion, but the truth, or something like that. I can see some of this beauty in the Ecclesia.
Theosophy has a place because theosophy has a place in liberal Catholicism. Without theosophy, there would not be liberal Catholicism as a movement. And of course, all of us that were liberal Catholic bishops coming together to form Ecclesia Babylon were influenced in many ways by the theosophical approach. So I would say that I refer to theosophy and liberal Catholicism and old Catholicism and my bhakti practice. I refer to them as my spiritual traditional grandparents, right? It's like you're descended from your grandparents, just like you're descended from your parents, and you're going to have traits of your grandparents, but you're not going to be them. You're going to be you. And that's the relationship we have to theosophy, I would safely say, in that we're descended from it, as we're descended from many traditions to lead us into one community. But how it factors in is it's so interwoven now that nothing stands out as radically theosophical if you would look at our practice.
Your community in Colorado is called Pineapple Abbey. What's the name, Pineapple?
So where I'm from is southern Indiana, and I grew up on the Ohio River, and so where I'm from, it's like Indiana and Kentucky are one thing really, but growing up, you were told that if you wanted to impress your guests, you always sat out pineapple because it was the best thing you could afford, because it's a rare fruit for us. So it doesn't grow, so you'd get it sent in. So them old farmers would put out that pineapple and they were really showing up. So to me, pineapples and Pineapple Abbey, it represents giving people the best that you have. So when people come here for spiritual work or retreats, and there have been people that have so far, just privately, but they've always been given the best that we have.
Right. Well, we're almost getting to the end. I have two more questions for you. The first one, I've known Thales for about like a decade. But before you meeting him, what did you think about Brazil? What did you know about us, our spirituality, everything? And how did that change when you start talking to us Brazilians?
What I did know is that there was a large Catholic community. So I knew nothing about Brazil before I met Thales. And now I know a lot. What I know about Brazil is that it's no different than America, really. The people are no different. We could be sitting across the table at a restaurant and we would not be out of place. Either place we went. If I went to Brazil or if you came to America, we'd be set. The people are wonderful. I guess I didn't expect how wonderful the people would be. Like I really loved the Brazilian community. I love the energy. I could go on, man. I don't want to gush, but like I know that Brazil, like America, has its troubles. Everyone's struggling and everyone's going through it. But man, you guys got a lot to offer the world. And the thing that rocked me was the potency of Thelema in Brazil, how massive it is as a movement when I thought that it was non-existent. I mean, I really thought, not having known anyone in Brazil, I just had no clue. And then when that door was open to me, it was like, not only is there a world of teachers and traditions in American occultism, but there is a world of study about the traditions and of Brazilian occultism that is fascinating. So I have been enjoying getting started on that road to learning about the various traditions and paths and learning about the folk traditions. I love it. I love all of it.
That's great. And our last question is, what advice would you give to someone that's starting now? This program this show that we are hosting, it goes like, well, I'd say about 1,000 people would watch us. And they are very young people, and they are very enthusiastic about magic. And since they are following us and they are watching all the interviews and everything, and I'm bringing outsiders from United States, England, and everything, and they will be marvelous. And the Ecclesia Babylon is a great way to start. So I want to divide in two questions. The first one is, what advice would you give to someone that is starting? And the second one is, how do we find you? How can someone join the Ecclesia Babylon?
Okay. So to answer your first question, to those that are starting out on this path, never compromise your integrity for any teacher or any group of students. Never allow your boundaries to be crossed by any teacher or student. Give yourself grace and allow yourself trial and error. Allow yourself to realize that maybe a particular path or a method might not be for you, and that it's okay to keep looking. And if you feel like you're still wandering, that's okay too, because you're still learning. And to be good to each other and to have fun. And so that to answer the second question, you can get me here in North America. You can get the whole community going to www.ecclesiababylon.com. You can find me on Instagram at Pineapple Abbey Official. And that's really the two locations where I do a lot of my online work. And then of course there's 4gsanctuary.com, and that's for the Brazilian community. And then I don't know if Talis talked about the community on Telegram, but there's a community on Telegram.
Yes, he did.
I'm just not very familiar with Telegram.
This address here in the description of the video.
Right on. Yeah, so that's where you can get a hold of me.
All right. Well, I'm still shy to call you Bobby, but Bobby, thank you so much for this interview. It was great. I really love to interview artists because, in my opinion, you are the guys who can really translate magic into the beauty of art.
Well, thank you so much. And you know what? You've been so gracious, and this has been such a wonderful conversation. And I really think the world of Brazil, and my heart's with you guys at all times. So love to all of you guys in 93-156.
Thank you. I will say just goodbye to the people from YouTube, and then we will open the cameras and talk a little more with you. Então, se você assistiu a gente até agora, não esquece, segue o canal, dá uma olhadinha na Eclésia e acompanha a gente. Tem mais 250 entrevistas doidas. E a gente se vê no próximo Bate-Papo Mayhem.